Welcome to the Code with Reza channel. My name is Reza and I'm here to teach you Python. Today, I want to talk about working with databases in Python using SQLAlchemy ORM. For this video, let's create a new virtual environment. I created a virtual environment in the last previous video. So if you have it, then ignore this part. But for those who just started to see this tutorial from this part, virtual environments help us to have separate environments and install the required dependencies in one environment without affecting other environments. First, we need to install pip. So you just need to go to terminal and say python 3-m pip install user upgrade pip. Then we need to install the virtual environment. For installing the virtual environment, we again say python 3-m pip install user virtual and then enter. I have created this before, so I don't do it. I'm just showing you how to do it. Then we need to create our virtual environment. So we say python 3-m venv SQL Alchemy workspace. Enter. Then we need to activate our virtual environment. When you create your virtual environment, you just need to look at the list of your folders and you will see SQL Alchemy workspace. We need to go to this virtual environment. So cd SQL, and then we we say source to activate it. We say source bin activate. This is how we activate a virtual environment. So it is activated now. Let's go to the code. We need to first import a couple of statements, couple of objects and classes. So we'll say from SQL Alchemy import create engine column integer and text. Let me remove this database. We want to create one from scratch. From SQLAlchemy.orm package, import session maker. When we work with SQL Alchemy ORM, we need to have a session to be able to insert, execute our statements. So session maker creates a session for us. This is why we are importing it. Then from SQL Alchemy extension, declarative, import declarative base. Here I'm using SQLite database. So the first thing is to connect to the database. So and create the engine. So I will say engine, create engine, and SQLite // the name of the DB, cars.db. And something very important, there is a class, we call it base. We need this to get it using the declarative base. So this base class is the base class of our entities, our model. So if we have a users, because this is object oriented, so if we have a users table, then we need to have a users class to represent that users table. because here we work only with objects. So I will create a class users. This is our entity, our model. It's based on the base class. We need to specify the table name which is associated to this class. So we'll say table name, this is a variable, equals users. This is our table. So with this line, we are telling Python that we want these user objects to be work with the users table, to map users table to these users class and objects. This should have an ID, which is a column type integer and primary key true. So this ID column is the primary key for us. Then the other column is name, column of type text, and email of type, which is a column of type text. Now we need to implement the wrapper method. Why we need to do that is because we want in different places to print the objects of type users, so that we implement this wrapper method to have a user friendly or formatted message when every time that you want to print the objects of type users. So when I say def, I will show you later what I'm trying to say. Return f users id self.id name self.name and email self.email. Now every time we want to print objects of this class, this will be shown to us. Okay, so this is our entity or our model. So for generating this class, there is a command that will say base that's metadata dot create all, and we pass the engine to that. When we do it, this base which we're using here, and then this metadata, and then create all creates all these tables for us. How does it know how to create? It knows the name of the table, it knows the columns, so it's easily created for us. Now we need a session. We say session equals, this is how we get a session. Session maker find equals engine. This function returns a function for us. We need to call that function again like this to get a session. Now we want to create a new user. So how do we do that in object-oriented way? We create an object. We don't insert a record directly like SQLAlchemy core. We don't create rows and records. We work with objects. So we say new user is our object, type users, name Reza, and email reza@gmail.com. Now let's print new user. Here we just have created the object. We have passed the name and email, here the name and the email, but the ID is none. because we haven't assigned anything to that, and we haven't inserted into the table. So there is no ID. So when we print it, this line will be called, and what we will see is this line, which has enough information. How do we create it really, this object? How we insert this object into the table? We add this object to the session and then we commit. So session dot add new user and then session dot commit. Now we have a user. At this stage, these objects will be inserted into table. It becomes an insert statement, and then we'll insert this object to the table. Let's have a look. How do we query the table and see it? We'll say all users, session again. We query the session over users entity. This is users comes from here. Users, class users. We query over users. This all object oriented. Everything is object here. And we wanna order by which column? Users ID. And we only need 10 of this, first 10 records. And because there is only one record, I would say all users. I know that there is only one record in here, but all users is a list. It always returns a list. Query returns a list. So in here, I will say the first item of this list, and makes sense because we are saying give us the first 10 items. So it is a list. But here we only have one, and we are interested in the first one. Once the execution comes here, we can see the inserted record, but this time, because we are reading from the table, the ID is also populated for us by the table. So the difference between the first print and the second print is that in the first print there is no ID because it's before adding to the table. But here is after adding to the table, so we have ID. Now let's edit it. It's super easy and fun to edit an object or record in SQLAlchemy ORM. It's very interesting. We say this new user that we had and we committed before, the same new user, for example, I want to change the email of Reza. I want to change it to my surname, ahmadi at gmail.com. And then we commit. That's all we need to do. So we did an update here. Interesting, isn't it? So the same object that we had in here, that we persisted the object using this add and commit. When we change any property of the object and we do the commit, the session will update that row in a table, which is very, very interesting. I love it. How now let's query to see if it really works. So we say user equals again session.query on the users entity. But this time we don't want all records. We want to filter. Filter means where in normal SQL. We filter where the users table. That's name is Reza. We only interested in the records where the username is Reza. And we don't want a list. We just want the first item of those items, which is fine for us because there is only one Reza. And we print it. So when we print, we should have Reza, but the email should be ahmadi at gmail.com. And finally, the hardest part. Let's kill our user. I know it's not good to kill people, but here we want to kill our user. So how do we do that? Very easy. Session dot delete user and session dot commit. So we have retrieved the user here. We pass the user to the delete and then we commit. When we commit, the thing will be executed. The operation will be executed. So let's verify the delete. User equals session dot query, the same as above. Let me copy from here and print user. Because there is no user now, I have deleted the Reza. It should return none. So let's run it and see the result in action. We cannot run from IDE. Just come to here because you have activated your virtual environment in the command and say Python 3. My file is main.py. Okay. First of all, it should create a database for us. If you look at here, the cars DB is here. So it has created the database. Look at the code. First time we created a new user without inserting in a table, and we are printing it. This is the first print. User ID, none. There is no ID because we haven't inserted in a table. But the name is Reza and the email is reza@gmail.com. Once we inserted this record, we persisted this object. Then we query the table. This time Reza has ID because we are retrieving from the database. The record has already been inserted. Look at here. The ID is 1. It's the same record, reza@gmail.com, but here the ID is 1. Then we come down and we change the email to ahmadi@gmail.com. We commit it, and then we look at Reza. Look at here, ID 1, the same user, Reza, but email has changed. So it shows that we can easily change the email by assigning a new value and committing the session. And the last one, we deleted the user and we looked for the user, we print the user, user is none, means there is nothing in the database. So this shows that how interesting is working with database using ORM and SQLAlchemy ORM, which is a object-oriented way of looking at the database. You don't work with values and rows and table. You work with objects and entities, and instead of saying you insert a record, we say we persist an object. We update an object and we remove the objects. What ORM does for us is translating our commands into the SQL statements. In this video, I talked about how to interact with a database using object-oriented way. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching and see you later. Bye.